Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at Learn Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn Grow Invest. I am pleased to be leading this conversation with Mr. Ross, and my apologies for my muting earlier. So what I was saying is that we are here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Orville. What I was saying is that we are here with Mr. Charles Ross, CEO of Sterling Investments Ltd, and it is my pleasure to host him today on Learn, Grow, Invest. Welcome, Mr. Ross.
Thanks, Renee. It's my pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. All right, so we're going to jump right into the conversation, and we're starting off, of course, with just finding out what is Sterling Investments Ltd and what do you do?
Okay. Well, Sterling Investments Limited is an investment holding company, and we invest mainly in fixed income instruments, but we also have a slot for private equity and a very small equity portfolio as well. And the idea is that investors can earn a decent return, get exposure to global capital markets, because most of our portfolio of investments are traded in the international market. And we also invest mainly in US dollar denominated instruments, which means that investors have a hedge and protect their capital, from depreciation of the Jamaican dollar.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, of course, we also need to ask, what is the difference between Sterling Investments Limited and Sterling Asset Management?
Okay, well, that's a very good question, Renee, and that's one that is often quite confused in the minds of the public. Sterling Asset Management is the investment manager for Sterling Investments Limited. And Sterling Asset Management is a licensed securities dealer. So we also deal in securities. We sell bonds to clients. We do repo investments for clients as well. And we also manage a mutual fund. So Sterling Asset Management really is the investment manager. And we manage the investments of Sterling Investments Limited.
Okay, understood. Now, before we jump into more about the company, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as CEO? Help us to get to know you.
All right. Well, I'm one of the original founders of Sterling Asset Management, and we founded the company in 2000, identifying a gap in the market in the medium to long-term investment space, and we sought to fill that need. Before that, I'm originally an engineer by training. I worked in engineering for about 15 years, and then moved into general management when I became executive director of the PSOJ. And while I was there, of course, we were looking and advocating for macroeconomic policies that we thought would lead to growth in the Jamaican economy. I don't know how successful we were given the lack of growth, but it gave me a lot of exposure to macroeconomic policy, the impact of that on the financial sector, on investments, and it really, I guess, prepared me very well for establishing Sterling Asset Management. And later on, we established Sterling Investments to give people an opportunity to get some exposure to the global fixed income market and earn some of what we found to be very attractive returns in that market.
That's excellent. So you would have touched on it before in terms of how Sterling Investments makes money, but can you dig a little deeper? Tell us a little bit more about how you actually increase that bottom line and how investors are able to benefit from what you do.
Right. Well, the company, as I mentioned, invests mainly in US dollar fixed income securities. So those securities earn returns. The portfolio return is probably between 7 and 8%. And with leverage, that goes up to between 9 and 10%. And we actually distribute a lot of the income. The dividend policy is to pay out about 80% of the realized income. And because the assets are denominated in US dollars, they provide a hedge against devaluation. So the underlying assets will maintain their value in US. We pay dividends in US dollars, and the company makes money not just from holding the securities, but also from selling them from time to time. So a lot of people don't know that bonds can appreciate in price as well, as well as stocks. And so that, you do find from time to time that bonds that you've bought have appreciated in price. It makes sense to sell them and buy something else. And so we can make capital gains and trading gains on the portfolio, as well as the income that we get from the bonds in the portfolio. So that's basically how the company makes money. Just as a way of an example, we have our mutual fund has been in operation since 2003. That's about 19 years. And even with a very rough year, which 2022 has been, the sort of weighted average return on the portfolio is over 10% per annum in US dollars. So that you would have earned a compound return of 10% per annum or a little more if you'd invested in the fund from the very beginning. So, and this is a US dollar fixed income fund as well. So it is possible to get pretty decent returns. And when you compound that over a long period of time, it means that you're making 5 or 6 times your original investment. So it is a reliable and proven strategy. And it's one that's SIL is making available to the wider market.
Very good. And that aligns with what you would have said about your purpose for being established in the first place. You're about medium to long-term investments. So I think that's important to reiterate for our audience, because in this market, the short-term investments tend to get more attention.
Well, everybody's in the equity market is looking for, a quick 20%.
Exactly.
But it's very difficult to do that all the time, every year, and but if you can get 10% in US dollar terms over a long period of time, that's a huge return. The US stock market, does about 12% per annum over an extended period of time. So 10% with less volatility is not a bad target.
It's comparable. Yeah. So thank you for that. The the Q3 results for SIL came out recently, about a week ago, at this time, and naturally coming out of that, the review of the report, there are a few questions, right? So I'll start off with, what is your strategy for managing and deploying cash in this current economic environment?
Right. Well, what we've done really is to try to be patient, because, of course, 2022 saw a huge downturn in global markets. Stocks and bonds fell significantly because the Fed woke up to the inflation problem and started raising interest rates aggressively and tightening US dollar liquidity to bring inflation down. So really what we had to do was just sit tight and prepare ourselves for the upside, because of course markets go down and then they hit rock bottom and then they turn up again. So this year has all been about sort of weathering the storm, collecting interest, but at the same time having to weather the fall in bond prices.
Right.
What it means, though, is that going into next year, we expect recovery, and what we expect is that there will be opportunity. Well, what we're seeing is that there are opportunities because there are bonds that have been very beaten up in price. They'll make good acquisitions, and next year the appreciation should take place. The other thing, and really the main thing that's affected the company this year, has been the revaluation of the Jamaican dollar.
Yes.
Again, that was unexpected, but the Bank of Jamaica has tremendous influence on the market, and they have put, I think, between $700 and $800 million into the foreign exchange market this year, with the expressed aim of preventing further depreciation of the currency, because this would help in bringing down Jamaican inflation. Now, unfortunately, that sort of intervention can't really be sustained over a long period of time. So, again, what we expect is that next year we're unlikely to see another revaluation of the currency. It's likely, again, over the medium term, that the difference in Jamaican inflation and US inflation or European inflation, that will be reflected in the exchange rate. And so we expect that you may have more depreciation next year than you would normally expect, because we've had less this year. So we certainly expect that that aspect of the income statement, which basically what happens is that we have to carry all of the movements in the exchange rate through the profit and loss. Now, these are unrealized, both the gains and the losses, because we're not selling the portfolio and converting to Jamaican dollars. So, but it does have a big impact on the reported profits. So, for example, in 2021, we had nearly $55 million of foreign exchange gains because of movement in the currency. And that was positive for the bottom line. This year, we had 20 million negative because, of course, there was an appreciation of the currency, and that resulted in unrealized losses. So really, just on that one item, there's a movement of over $75 million, nearly $76 million in the negative in 2022. So really, that explains most of the the lower profit reported in 2022. The
Well,
others,
thank you for that, because that was my next question.
yeah, so that really explains the difference. The other minor factor was that, of course, in 2021, we had appreciation in bond prices, part of the recovery from COVID-19. So we were able to sell bonds and book profits, book gains. Whereas this year, yep, we were able to record some gains, but much less than last year because, of course, by and large, bond prices have been moving the other way. So really,
Right.
the opportunities to sell and make profits were not there. So those two factors really are the major um, reasons why the reported profit this year is much lower than it was last year, even though the top line in terms of interest income
Yes.
increased and improved, by about 10%.
Understood. And appreciate the depth of that response, because you covered my next two questions in that one response, because we were curious as to what is the greatest impact on your profitability. And what I gathered from what you've shared is that it's really the exchange rate that is the major factor, the largest factor that impacts your profitability.
Yeah, well, what I would say is that that is the most volatile aspect of our profits, and
Understood.
it can move them up or down because those movements are significant and very unpredictable. In the
Yeah.
short, in the medium to
In
long,
the short term.
we're pretty confident as to what will happen. And again, it's not rocket science. Our inflation target is much higher than the inflation target in Europe and North America. So our currency is going to lose value over time against those currencies because of that inflation differential.
Right. Understood. So in your introduction of SIL, you would have shared that you do fixed income and some amount of private equity. Is there any thought or intent to diversify outside of what you currently do, or the construct of SIL as it is right now?
Well, what I would say is that, you know, for us, diversification now would probably represent making a significant private equity investment. Um, so we do have an allocation in our budget, in our portfolio for that sort of activity, but really we have to have a convincing um, case to really deploy our capital into that area. And we haven't really come across an enticing and convincing deal yet. So I would say that that is what would represent for us significant diversification. Um, we have our portfolio of securities is very diversified. And so we do have a great deal of diversification in the area of US dollar fixed income. But we are looking really for um, private equity opportunities to deploy some, again, medium-term capital into a growth opportunity.
That sounds great. Would you be able to share anything with us about that private equity side? What are you looking for? What would be considered investable for you as SIL?
Well,
Is that something you're able to share?
yeah, well, what I would say is that we would be looking for companies with with growth prospects, good growth prospects. Um, we're not really in the venture capital business, and yes, I mean, we would ideally like something with maybe an export exposure, but the real opportunity would be for growth, for there to be real growth in the company's operations and bottom line.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood. And of course, there is always a lot of talk about dividends, right? And the yield and how much is enough, what it is that investors are looking for. So is there any thoughts or consideration of adjusting your dividend yield?
Well, I would say that our dividend yield as of the last dividend payment was about 6.7%. And in US dollar terms, I think that's very attractive. And the dividends are tax free because the company is registered in St. Lucia. So I think that's pretty competitive. I don't know of many other companies with a 6.7% US dollar dividend yield. So we think that's quite attractive. You'd be hard pressed to find US dollar investments, even in the fixed income space, that would give you a 6.7% return tax free.
Yeah.
So we think that that's quite attractive. And now there's no guarantee that that's what it's going to be year in, year out, but that's what it is at the moment. And I'm sure investors would find that quite attractive.
All right, so I'm just giving a glance to our chat here, and dividends are always a hot topic in this community, right? And so I knew I had to look, what are they saying about it? And really, Chike is here and agreeing with you that it is indeed attractive, and the tax-free and USD aspect of things seem to be boding well with our audience. So Troyan says that investors want to see aggressive growth coupled with great dividends. And I think that's a good segue into my next question, because the next question really is, what are the short to midterm plans for SIL in terms of growth and or expansion?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that one of the interesting things about Sterling Investments is that we actually are able to raise capital continuously. We have two options through which we take in capital. One is a dividend reinvestment program. So some of our shareholders have opted to reinvest their dividends. So instead of taking the dividends in cash, what they do is they use them to purchase shares in the company. And those shares that's done quarterly. Well, dividends are paid twice a year. So on those occasions, investors have the opportunity of basically acquiring shares at the market price without any broker fees or anything like that. So that's one avenue. The other avenue is what we call the complementary share purchase program. So that every quarter, again, existing shareholders can buy additional shares directly from the company. Again, at the end of quarter price of the market price of the shares. So we are in a way continuously taking in capital, and that is certainly an avenue that existing shareholders can use to acquire more shares in the company. So that's one way in which we continually take in capital. Of course, from time to time, we might have a rights issue or something like that if there's a particular opportunity that we see, and
Right.
we may do that, going forward. But what we're really focused on is, exactly what the investors would like to see, which is that you keep the company growing, you keep a nice flow of dividends, And at the same time, you have appreciation in the price of the shares and the underlying value of the shares, which is something that we certainly focus on.
Yes. So um, I'm glad that you mentioned that complimentary share program. I'm quite impressed. I'm seeing in the chat where Jermaine would have also indicated that he never knew about it, and a few persons are indicating the same. However, I must acknowledge that we do have Chike in the chat, who is an avid SIL advocate. He has always been sharing about SIL, and he has all the information. So let me just say that publicly, that Chike, who does analysis on Learn, Grow, Invest from time to time, has always been following SIL. So if you need that SIL info, you can check him for that. All right. But yes, he is one who has always been advocating for you. So
Oh,
I thought I would just mention that.
yes. Yeah.
All right. So that was the short to midterm. Is it any different for like your 10-year goals for the company?
Yeah, well, like all companies, we certainly want to grow our capital base. And when we, as I mentioned, that we do see, you know, good private equity investments as a key part of a medium to long-term growth strategy. So certainly, depending on the size of the opportunity that we see, we may well come to the market to raise additional capital, and expand the capital base that way. But in the interim, we're really growing organically, and we expect that growth to continue. But certainly for the medium term, we really want to find an opportunity that we can take advantage of in the private equity space.
Okay, that is great. So we have a very active community here at Learn, Grow, Invest, and they have sent in some questions for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to field those questions now as best as I can, and I'll say to our audience or participants, if I get your question wrong, please don't hesitate to correct me in the chat. All right. So the first question is, what is your outlook for 2023 based on what SIL is invested in now, and what challenges do you foresee for the company?
Okay. Well, I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic about 2023, because I think that we're pretty close to the end of the current cycle of interest rate increases in the US. And I think that inflation is going to come down faster than the market and even the Federal Reserve is expecting. So what this means is that a pivot in the Fed's policies is likely to come sometime in the first half of next year, I think. And that will be very positive for asset prices, both equities and bonds. So that I see next year being a year in which there will be more trading opportunities. There'll be opportunities to roll from shorter term securities that we have in the portfolio into longer term securities with very attractive yields. So I'm as I said, I would like to say even more than cautiously optimistic, but I'm optimistic that next year will be a year of significant growth in terms of our trading opportunities, and that will also enhance the overall yield of the portfolio. Also, I again, as I said before, I don't see the next year being another year of appreciation in the currency.
Right.
That really would put a lot of stress on the reserves, and would really not be a pro-growth strategy itself, because it will negatively impact the export sectors of the economy, which are the real drivers of economic growth for Jamaica. and indeed for any country. So I would think that the negative impact that we've had from that this year won't be there. And we also will have significant opportunities for trading and for improving the overall yield on the portfolio. So I'm pretty optimistic about next year.
Understood. So in terms of before I get to my next question, maybe I should ask this. Can you share with us which countries are you currently operating in?
Well, we have investments in North American institutions, European institutions, a little bit of LATAM, Mexico, Brazil. So Mexico, Brazil, the US, Europe, France, Germany, the UK, major European countries as well.
Okay, great. All right. So coming off the back of that, Cayman was currently gray listed for FATF.
Yeah.
Can you advise how concerned you are as SIL based on your move to Cayman?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that question because it allows me to clarify the situation. SIL or Sterling Investments is not moving to Cayman. Sterling Investments remains registered in St. Lucia. What is happening is that the investments that Sterling Investments Limited holds will move into a subsidiary which is registered in Cayman. So that is what is happening. It's not that the registration of the company is moving to Cayman or that the operations of the company are moving to Cayman. No, it's just that a Cayman entity will hold the investments for Sterling Investments Limited. The bonds, stocks.
Thanks for clarifying.
So it won't affect us at all, I don't think. I'm really not too clear myself on all of this grey listing and blacklisting. It's I don't think it's related very much to what's actually happening in the country. It's more about the OECD, the industrialized countries, applying pressure to countries that they view as really providing their citizens and investors in companies with an opportunity to avoid taxes in Europe or North America. So it's a new form of imperialism, which nobody is unfortunately talking up about, but it's just part of life in the tropics these days.
Yeah, a part of the environment that you now have to navigate, right?
Yes, indeed, yeah. And we here in Jamaica are affected by it significantly as well, because we're on some list which we want to get off.
Right. We are, and we do. So I'm going to go to the chat now. There are a few questions in the chat. I'll just bring them up on screen. So the first one is, are there any existing private equity investments that you're able to share here?
No.
Private.
Even I really couldn't say anything until something concrete had been settled by the board and so on. But no, we really. We're always on the lookout, but I can't say that there's anything in particular that we're considering at the moment.
Clear on that. The next question is, how can investors prepare themselves in terms of their portfolios for 2023?
Yeah. Well, again, I think what I would advise, and I always advise that investors take a medium to long-term view. What I think is that there certainly will be, and there are right now, in fact, attractive opportunities in either of the asset classes, stocks or bonds, and there are opportunities, I think, in the local market as well as in the international market. So what I think investors should do is take this time now to do their analysis. Look, if they're looking at the Jamaican stock market, well, look at the company's performance. Look at, their current earnings, the trends in those earnings, and look at what you think their earnings might be going forward. What are the market valuations, relative to historical valuations in terms of price earnings ratios, as well as current. How do they stack up against other companies in the market? Because really what you want to do is you want to buy the companies who've been beaten up. They have good earnings, but their prices are down, PEs are down.
Yes.
You have to ask yourself, why is that so? Does this mean the company's performing worse than usual, or is this an opportunity to buy?
Right.
And I think that's the approach for the fixed income market. I mean, in the global market, we're having to ask ourselves those questions all the time, because there's some bonds that you see offering yields that they're comparable to companies of much lower credit quality. You have to ask yourself, why is that? Is this an opportunity? And when you think it's an opportunity, you buy.
Yes.
If you think there's some good reason for the high yield, well, then you stay away. Similarly with stocks, a lot of stocks in the US have been beaten up. Now that's a huge market. I think if you don't have a lot of money to invest and a lot of time, it may be a good time to look at an index. So you want to buy the NASDAQ, or do you want to buy the S&P or the Dow or some segment or sector of those economies? I think that there are opportunities there. It's very difficult to time the market.
Yes.
So, one of the standard pieces of advice is, average down, average up. Maybe just buy a certain amount of whatever it is that you like each month, each week, and hold on, because you don't really have to catch the absolute bottom. As long as a year or two from now you're up by a significant amount, then that's really what you're looking for. So I think it's a good time to have money and to be looking to invest.
Yes. So thank you for that, because it sounds very similar to what we share in our community all the time. Do your homework. Take the opportunity to learn about the companies and invest accordingly. In our Telegram group that is active on a daily basis, the conversation or the terminology used is that the stocks are on sale. So it's a good time to buy. So thank you for that. I hope that our audience is taking notes, because it's exactly what we need to be actioning right now and not just thinking about anymore, right?
That's true. Indeed.
Yeah. So the next question, and this is from Chike. Can you state what is your short and medium term period for an investment?
Okay. Short is really, I guess, 1 to 2 years. I know in Jamaica, short is a matter of months, but I would say 1 to 2 years would be short. Medium would be 3 to 5. Longer term would be really anything sort of, really 3 to 6 would be medium. And over 6 years, you could consider long term. Longer term.
Okay. Okay, I think that one was pretty straightforward. And Alien is asking, how is the investment in the European market going with the current environment?
Well, again, we're not really in the equity space, and European equities have been beaten up just like those in North America and here in Jamaica. But we do, and we have seen good value in bonds issued by large European banks and financial institutions. And that's where we have found a lot of value over, I would say, over the last 10 years or so. And right now there are, or what has happened is that there's a certain class of bonds issued by those institutions which have fallen in price. So the yields have gone up significantly. And we think that they hold great value or offer great value at the moment. So it's about picking them up before the prices rise too much.
Understood. So I think there are two more questions from the chat from Troyan. Who are your customers in terms of net worth?
Well, again, what I would say is that remember, SIL is not a normal operating company. It's more like a closed-end fund. So I guess our customers are our investors. So the shareholders of SIL are really the only people that you could consider to be its customers.
Right.
And it's very difficult to classify them, in terms of net worth or not. What we do have is we do have a lot of pension funds that have made significant investments in SIL. So I would say that they are really the largest in terms of net worth. I mean, their net worth is huge. So we have a lot of pension funds that are invested, but there's also a lot of retail investors as well.
So I think what he was trying to get at is if there is a minimum, if there is a limit to the amount that is needed to be able to invest in SIL. I think that was really where he was going with
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's a listed company, so you just go to your stockbroker and you buy as many shares as you want. I don't know if brokers have a minimum amount that you need to invest, but certainly from the company's point of view, there's no minimum. You can
Thank
buy
you for that.
Yeah.
And the final question is, does SIL invest in Jamaican stocks?
Well, what I would say is that we did have a very small portfolio. I think most of it has been sold. There may be one or two positions, but they're very, very small compared to the overall size of the portfolio. So it's not something that we wouldn't do. We think the Jamaican stock market offers opportunities from time to time. In the short term, we think it offers opportunities for the long-term investor as well. So, the Jamaican Stock Exchange, I think, is a viable investment vehicle for local investors, certainly.
Okay. So I thought that was the last one, and then another one came in. And this is from Orville. How would you compare the efficiencies or inefficiencies on the JSE compared to the North American or European markets in terms of accountability going forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that one of the major differences between an equity market in the US or Europe is liquidity. One of the major drawbacks of the Jamaica Stock Exchange is the relatively low liquidity. What that does is it makes it difficult to get in and out of stocks with ease, and without having to take a long time and compromise on price, etc. So really, it really is a medium to long-term investment. There are times when the market gets very hot, and come out of a 3 or 4 year period of that, leading up to 2020,
Yes.
when it appears to be easier, and there's more activity in the market, but liquidity is really the major drawback, and it's a reflection on the size of our economy and the level of development in the economy. Um,
Okay.
Europe and North America, they're huge. They've been around for a long time. They have huge institutions, individuals with lots of money. So they have market makers, and it's a whole different infrastructure. But it's what we have, and we have to all use it to the best of our own ability and benefit.
I agree. So I see we had a question asking how we could improve that liquidity issue, but in your addressing why we have the liquidity issue, I think it would have alluded to that.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is that, again, the central bank in any institution, in any environment is very influential. And in a small economy like Jamaica, it's supremely influential. And a lot of the liquidity that would fuel the stock market and so on is influenced by Bank of Jamaica's monetary policy. At the moment, that monetary policy is contractionary, so it's removing liquidity and making the availability of Jamaican dollars less. So
Right.
that has a direct impact on the market. So it's really about investor education, investor participation. I think that's a very important part of the market, and just growth. There needs to be growth in the economy.
Agreed. So thank you for mentioning investor education. That's what we're here for at Learn Grow Invest. And I think this is actually our final question now. Orville is asking, do you see any specific sector breaking out in the medium to short term on the JSE?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult for me to prognosticate because I really don't follow the market all that closely. But one of the things that financial institutions seem to be recovering from a profitability point of view, although they still face challenges. And rising interest rates could benefit the financial sector to a certain extent as well. Again, as the economy recovers, I mean, I think we've recovered quite a bit from COVID. Companies that serve distribution that have a healthy local market or overseas market, those companies should benefit from the recovery. I mean, because the economy itself isn't growing,
Yeah.
that poses a problem, especially for larger entities. For smaller companies, they still have room. They're so small that they can take market share. They can expand their operations without running up against the limitations of the macroeconomy.
Right.
Maybe the smaller companies might be able to respond and benefit even more from the overall economic recovery. But larger companies are striking back. We're seeing very good results in some of the financial companies. So that may be an area where there could be some significant upside next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for your time with us today. I know I benefited a lot from this conversation, and as did our audience. So we thank you for taking the time to sit with us and to share with us about Sterling Investments Limited, giving us more insight and a greater appreciation for the company itself, what it is that you do, and how it is that investors should be assessing and looking at your company.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been very interesting, and it's been a pleasure having an interaction with some of the shareholders, some of your investor group, and yeah, it's been a great opportunity, and thank you.
You're most welcome. So, for our viewers, thank you for being with us. Thank you for staying. Remember to like and share and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I will also remind you that coming up next week, December 2nd and 3rd, is our Grow Your Wealth virtual conference. It is free, guys, and we have over 15 amazing speakers ready to share their wealth of knowledge on debt management, money management, on entrepreneurship and investing. So please, if you have not yet done so, go over to learngrowinvestconference.com, register and share with your friends and family so that we can all have a better start to 2023 as we seek to grow our wealth together. All right, so thank you all. Remember to like, remember to share, and we will see you in the next video. Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at Learn, Grow, Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.